Oh boy, this is a long one. Hi guys, Aaron here. So, at the time of me recording this, my first video covering the lore of Lullaby for a Dead Man has hit about 10 views, which is good enough for me to keep trekking forward with this series. Seriously, if you guys enjoy this, let me know with a like and subscribe. I think this stuff is interesting, and if you do too, letting me know is the only way to keep it happening. Especially since today's episode is a twofer, which means that it took twice the work to make. Okay, not really, but it's still a lot of work. Today, we're going to be covering the other two musical Easter eggs in World at War Zombies and seeing how they further shape our storyline. As I said in the last video, while I do some research, a lot of this is speculation based on the events that we already know to take place in later maps and later games. Meaning that this is pretty much just a theory. A game No, I said I wasn't going to give in to that impulse, and I mean it. You hear me, brain? I mean it! Anyway, let's get into how Shinonuma's The One and Doris's Beauty of Annihilation set the stage for the events on Moon. So, starting first with Shinonuma, the song The One is another unique activation when compared to those in later maps. Much like flushing the toilet in Verrückt, in Shino, the song is activated by interacting with a rotary phone in the comm room 3 times. Each time you interact with it, you'll hear the sound of the dial on the phone click, and if you listen carefully, you can actually tell that the player is dialing 115. This is then followed by an eerie voice whispering the first line of the chorus in Lullaby for a Dead Man. I know where you're sleeping. With that, the song is activated. Quick side note before we get into the song. One thing that I love about this setup is it actually shows immediate growth from the previous song in execution. Instead of it just being an Easter egg song, it's actually 3 Easter eggs in one. The first being 115 dialed into the phone, which at the time was sort of a fresh thing to the community. The second being the line from the song in the previous map, showing a distinct connection between the two. And the third being the song itself. It's wonderful, and I love it. Now, the reason I wanted to cover this song before Beauty of Annihilation is because, admittedly, this song doesn't give us too much new information on its own. If we look at the first verse and chorus, which I won't actually be reading out, but are here for you to see, you'll notice right away that there's little subtlety in the song's perspective. The song is clearly speaking from the point of view of a zombie. That's really it, all the way through. It admittedly is underwhelming to a certain degree, but it's not disappointing necessarily, and you'll see why by the end of the video. If I were to pull anything else of interest from this song alone, it might be that the zombies are waiting for death so that they can be set free, which would indicate that the souls of the infected are trapped inside, but by the time soul canisters were introduced, we saw that firsthand, and honestly, it doesn't really mean much to the greater story. It's kind of just sad, I guess. But with that discussed, let us move into our larger beast, Beauty of Annihilation. This song can be activated by finding 3 spines around the Doris map. One in the teleporter B room just to the right as you enter, and the other 2 sitting across from each other as you walk down the stairs near Juggernog. Each spine will make a distinct sound when you activate it, letting you know it's been interacted with. After all 3 are activated, the song will begin. Now, Beauty of Annihilation. Oh boy. Before I can even analyze this song, I just have to say that out of all of the old songs, this one was by far one of my favorites. I just remember listening to it on the bus every day to and from school, on car rides with my parents when I was just a bit too young to drive. Damn, this song was my jam. And because I am positively biased about it, you know that my breakdown of it is going to be completely objective and extremely scrutinizing. Anyway, the first verse goes as follows. All my atrocities come by way of reciprocity. I'm chewing the bones of my own reprieve. Death be my dignity, execute hemlock philosophy, poison fills the cup of the carpenter. Now, if you're like me, you're probably thinking, shit, big words. And you're right, there are indeed a lot of big words, which essentially translate to I'm a murderous psychopath who dreams of death and execution, which is how we know that the point of view of this song is Richtofen. But I can already hear you saying, "But Muffin, that's not what the lyrics really say." And while I'm inclined to disagree just because of your stupid voice, I understand your point enough to concede and break it down further for you. The first part of the verse says that the atrocities committed by who we are assuming to be Richtofen are, in Richtofen's mind, justified by a sense of mutual benefit between himself and what I suppose you could call his victims. This is the meaning of reciprocity for those of you who, like I, have to Google search every big word they see. Of course, this line most immediately reflects on his killing of zombies, since much of the song focuses around that point, and we know that from the one in Shinonuma there is sort of an underlying desire by the souls within the zombies to be killed. However, Richtofen is a lot more sinister than that, as said in his World at War bio and in the radios found throughout the map. So I think it stands to reason that this line does in fact prove, if nothing else, his warped morality in general. The next few lines focus around a similar theme, which is best stated in the third, "Death be my dignity." These lines together basically amount to the fact that Richtofen sees death as an opportunity to become one with the Aether, and while he's certainly set on not dying, he does not fear death, or even Samantha for that matter. The line, "Execute hemlock philosophy," is actually an interesting line to emphasize this. Hemlock philosophy, for those of you not familiar with either Plato or Socrates, which, shame on you if you're not familiar with obscure ancient Greek philosophical debates, is in fact a reference to a parable in which Plato and Socrates discuss how every man by their very nature is mortal. Richtofen obviously seeks to reach immortality by means of the Aether, thus executing the hemlock philosophy, the natural morality of men. After this, we have some odd back and forth dialogue with a demonic voice which goes like this. "No, love's lost on me. More, life so costly." And this repeats before we eventually reach "Bring me down" with 7.62 high velocity. Now, I believe when it comes to the actual lyrics, this sequence means very little, but when it comes to the variation in voices, this says a lot. As we know, Richtofen hears a lot of voices all the time, while as Richtofen, in almost every case, we can never hear these voices as a player, we know they are there. And, furthermore, I think these songs, yes, more than one, tell us some of the things those voices say. For example, let's just imagine that the lyrics that aren't demonic come from Richtofen's last bit of sanity. Perhaps then, we are seeing the voices telling him to stop thinking about the large amount of pain he's causing to others, friends and foe alike. While this may seem to imply the thoughts of a more caring Richtofen than we've ever known, at least out of the Ultimus crew, I think the fact that love is even mentioned in the lyrics is an interesting insight. To associate love with anything Richtofen seems radical, yet we know with Richtofen's backstory and his once strong admiration for Maxis that a softer side of Richtofen does exist, and perhaps the reason we never see that is because of the voices we see here. There's more I feel I could go into, but let's keep moving into the chorus. "I can see them everywhere. They're all around me. They're waiting for me. Descending, unrelenting beauty of annihilation." Now, the interesting part in these lyrics is one in particular series of lines at the beginning. "I see them everywhere." It can be very easy to associate this with zombies again, however, as this line is brought up again and again in later parts of the song, particularly in the bridge, the tone of it to me just doesn't sound like he's referring to zombies. It seems more likely that these lines are referring to something else. Perhaps the figures which come with the voices. This might seem like a baseless claim, and while we're going linearly through songs at the moment, it kind of is, but I will say that this idea is justified by the lyrics in the later song, Pareidolia in Shangri-La. This paired with the fact that in the Black Ops 3 remaster of Deriz, Takio mentions seeing in his dreams a man in shadow, proves that seeing figures is not out of reason. But it still leaves the question, what is Richtofen seeing? To a certain degree, this actually still remains unanswered, but there's no point in dwelling on that. Next verse. Your curiosity feeding off my animosity, and the reason is treason. Down with all that's good and clean, you can't annihilate me. Bring you down with 7.92 and no impunity. Now, I think this says a lot about things happening in the story. Starting with this first set of lines, this clearly is referring to some sort of questioning from an outside source of Richtofen's methods, and subsequently, plots of treason. Now, in my own headcanon, I'd like to think that this is the rest of the crew who seems to distrust Richtofen and yet still follows him. Perhaps they were once planning a coup that they never got around to, but I feel like as much as I would love that twist, it probably is not the case. Rather, I think this emphasizes how Richtofen felt about Maxis's questioning of his experiments and methods. We know that from the radios that Maxis was suspicious of Richtofen, and that scientifically the two butted heads frequently. This would then fit with a greater understanding of Richtofen feeling betrayed by Maxis, but also ironically being flipped on its head when Richtofen betrays Maxis. The second part, all in demonic screamo, further shows Richtofen's animosity, and perhaps that the animosity's origin is the voices. With these lines together, it could imply that the voices gave Richtofen the plan to get rid of Maxis. This is then followed by another chorus, a bridge in which Richtofen further shows his craziness by repeating how death is so beautiful, and a final chorus that ends with some rather interesting lines to close the song. Beauty of annihilation, looks like your prophet was mistaken. Is life really gone or just been wasted? Doom so close that I can taste it. Now, I think it's clear that this refers to the end of Richtofen's scheme in which he takes control. However, what I think is less clear is that while this was a premature end to the World at War DLC content, since Kino was reportedly meant to be a part of the package deal, I think they used this opportunity to end the prologue for our story perfectly. With the combined information given in Varuk, Shinonuma, and Darius, we now have all of our building blocks that lead directly into Moon. We have mention of Samantha's turn and control over the zombies via the MPD in Varuk, Richtofen's desire and plan in Darius, and the zombies in Shino, which act as a mediator of Samantha's power. The songs are even positioned within the linear order perfectly, literally putting the zombies between Samantha and Richtofen. The reason why I said earlier that the one is not nearly as disappointing as might be expected. And then, with all of that, to end with a line that directly ties to Richtofen's plan for domination and subsequently what happens as a result of that plan is beautiful. It is the fact that this song outlines Richtofen's goals altogether that makes Beauty of Annihilation a secretly wonderful piece. It seems easy to assume that the title of the song itself references the annihilation of zombies, but much like in the story where things are not as they seem, it may be even more true to say that it speaks to the annihilation of the human race in the bid for control of the world between Samantha and Richtofen. And now, with that out of the way, the stage is set, and we can watch our story unfold. Thank you all for watching if you made it this far. Again, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you really enjoy this. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to me. It gives me the motivation to make more videos like these, and it really helps with the growth of what I'm trying to do here. So all the support you can muster is really appreciated for a small channel such as this. Anyway, I'll see you all in the next video. Catch you on the flip.